Right, shalom, shalom. First, I'd like to give all praises unto YAHAWAH, SHAM, YAHAWASHI, RACHAA, QADASH, and double honors unto the apostles and elders of Great Millstone. And honors to you brothers out there in the highways and the byways, teaching this word in all sincerity and in truth. And I want to go through John the 11th chapter from the 47th verse on down, just touch on a few things that I believe add greater context and understanding to the mystery of the Gentiles. If you didn't know, then what you will find out is that the Gentiles, as they were referred, the heathen or the Gentiles that received the gospel were in actual fact Israelites that were scattered among the Gentiles or among the heathen. And that the gospel and the salvation is for the seed of Israel and the seed of Israel only, as was prophesied. Now, John 11:47 says, Then gathered the chief priests and the Pharisees, a council, and said, What do we, for this man doeth many miracles? Now, the chief priests and the Pharisees were like a very important power structure within Judea, I suppose we got to talk about Judea. What was Judea? Okay, so if we go back historically, dealing with the children of Israel from the time that Israel came out of Egypt, Israel was ordered into, families, heads of families, heads of clans, heads of tribes, Moses set up an order, and at the top of that order, over all the tribes and all the great men, was Moses himself sitting as a king. When the Israelites, that all the tribes together went over into the promised land, they didn't have a king. Each tribe or clan judged according to themselves. I mean, they had the law, they had the Levites living among them, but there wasn't one central authority. The Most High was the one central authority. The Most High was the king. Okay. And then the children of Israel complained that they wanted a king like unto all the nations round about, because all the nations had kings. So then the Lord set up a king for Israel, the first king over the tribes, royal house after Moses, and that would be Saul. But the kingdom was taken away from Saul and given unto his brethren, David, who was of the tribe of Judah. And so established the throne of David and the house of David. And all the kings, for that time, going from, from that time onward, really the house of Judah is the proper kingship over all the tribes. However, what happened was, after Solomon, because you had David and over all the tribes, and you had Solomon over all the tribes, through transgression, the Lord divided the kingdom. So the nation of Israel was divided into two kingdoms, the northern kingdom and the southern kingdom. The southern kingdom was Judah, Benjamin, and many of the priests, which would be Levi. And then you had the northern kingdom, which was Ephraim, Gad, and so on and so forth down the line. And a new royal family or throne was set up among the children of Ephraim over all the tribes. And then you had two kingdoms, the kingdom of Judah, and the kingdom of Israel. Now, the kingdom of Israel, they left the land and departed from among them. And who remained? The kingdom of Judah. After a while, they started being called the Jews to represent that kingdom. Now, they went into captivity under the Babylonians, and then under the Persians, the Medes, the Greeks. Okay, and over the process of time, you ended up with Judea, which Judea represented the general land, which was supposed to be the inheritance of Judah, Benjamin, and Levi, but did encompass other territories, Israelite territories as well. And the remnant, those of the kingdom of Judah, with a scattering of some of the other tribes who remained under the covenant and retained their heritage. These were Judeans, Jews, Judeans. And it was like that even down to the time of Rome, where Judea was an actual Roman province. So you had the Pharisees, the chief priests, but then you also had a king, a puppet king, which was set up, who was Herod. Herod was a puppet king. And then on top of that puppet king, you even had Pilate, who was the Roman governor. Okay? So that's where the chief priests and the Pharisees, they fit in, as they were like de facto leaders of the people, but there was even a king over them, which was Herod, who was an Edomite, and then you had Pilate. All right, and because they were a Roman province, things like death penalties were reserved for Pilate to judge. Okay, so you gotta understand that history, and that's why you gotta read the Bible. That's why you gotta get into that history, because that's all context. That's all context. So when YAHAWASHI, or who you call Jesus, was on earth 2,000 years ago, he wasn't living in a time where all the tribes were dwelling in the land as a nation, as 12 tribes together as one, with one head, and the usual infrastructure which existed during the time of David. That infrastructure that existed during the time of David and the time of Solomon was no longer there. The nation had been split, and not only that, even that kingdom, that kingdom of Judah, was a shadow of what it once was, due to all the captivities that had taken place. And you had many members of the kingdom of Judah who had been Hellenized and scattered among the different nations of Asia Minor for different reasons, some by choice, some by captivity, who had not retained their heritage, and these were not considered, Jews or Judeans, because they had discontinued from their heritage. They weren't speaking a language, or they never had the birth records, or they weren't following the proper religious rites, and so on, and culture, and so on and so forth. These people were not considered as part of the nation, or as part of Judea. All right, Judea was a very specific thing at that time. So reading on, all right, it says, for this man doeth many miracles. That's YAHAWASHI. So YAHAWASHI was dwelling where? In Judea, among the Judeans, among the Jews. And he was doing miracles among them. It says, if we let him thus alone, all men will believe on him. So they were worried about all of the Judeans believing on YAHAWASHI. Right? And the Romans shall come and take away both our place and nation. Meaning they were fearful that YAHAWASHI would create a rebellion, a sedition. And then, as they've seen, because they were learned, right? The Pharisees, the chief priests, they knew and understand what had happened to the surrounding nations who rebelled, because the Romans had to put down many rebellions throughout their time as rulers, and they were brutal, right? They know how to crush a people. So they feared that if everyone was to follow YAHAWASHI, then the Roman Caesar and Pilate and all them dons would see that as a rebellion and would send the centurions, send the Roman army to put down that rebellion. And they knew that that would mean wholesale slaughter and captivity for the people. All right, because they weren't being spiritual, they were being carnal. All right, they were carnal men. They feared the Romans rather than fearing Yahawah, Shem, Yahawashi, and trusting in the scriptures. All right, and that was their problem. So he said, if we let him thus alone, all men will believe on him, and the Romans shall come and take away both our place and nation. Now, the nation that they were talking about there did not represent all the tribes together as one. No, the only nation they knew and the only nation they grew up with was Judea, the Judeans, the Jews who were part of that Judean infrastructure or that Judean organization. They wasn't concerned or thinking about the Israel that was recorded in the scriptures. As far as they're concerned, that was them. They were the remnant of that. They wasn't concerned about the Gadites and the Ephraimites and all these other tribes that were out there in the world. They wasn't concerned with Jews who had Hellenized themselves and were now out there in the world. They wasn't concerned with that. When they considered their nation, they were considering the Jews of Judea, which represented a remnant that remained in the land, or who were registered so they would come back 3 times a year to keep the high holy days. All right, because you had certain Jews that were living outside of Judea, but they were considered as part of the Commonwealth because why? They had their birth records, they kept the customs, and they returned 3 times a year for the Passover, and so forth. Yeah. So that has to be said. And one of them, named Caiaphas, being the high priest that same year, said unto them, Ye know nothing at all, nor consider that it is expedient for us, right, that one man should die for the people, speaking of the Judeans, and that the whole nation perish not. He's talking about Judea. And this spake he not of himself, but being high priest that year, he prophesied that Yahawashi should die for that nation. What, in the context, what were they considering as that nation? He was talking about the Judeans. Yeah? And not for that nation only, because he understood that he didn't just come for the Judeans, for the Jews of Judea, but that also he should gather together in one, as prophesied, the children of God that were scattered abroad. So he's acknowledging and he's trying to show them that, look, he's not going to be the end of the, Yahawashi didn't come to be the end of the nation. He came to be salvation to the nation, to the people. Yeah, that all shouldn't perish in what? In sin. But not only to them, but also to the children of God that were scattered abroad. Meaning what? Because you had Israelites, children of God. All of you are the children of God. The children of God that were scattered. And when you look up that word for scattered, it means like when you take wheat and you throw it. Yeah, and that's what the Lord did with the Israelites. He scattered them. Beginning with the northern kingdom, but even members of the southern kingdom were also scattered throughout the world. And them too were going to receive salvation. And that's why it specifically says, gather together in one the children of God that were scattered abroad. Because the children of God were divided and separated. First into 2 kingdoms, but then they were even more so scattered throughout the earth. All right. And not for the nation, that nation only, but that also he should gather together in one the children of God that were scattered abroad. All right. And even if you go to the other translations, yeah, it says NLT, and not only for that nation, but to bring together and unite all the children of God scattered around the world. Who were the children of God that were scattered around the world? It's the Israelites. Okay? Now, right, so this is Deuteronomy, the 4th chapter, all right? And I'm going to show you that one of the consequences of sin and breaking the covenant would be that our people would be scattered. And when the Lord made this statement in Deuteronomy, the 4th chapter, he wasn't talking to the Jews. He was talking to all the tribes, because all the tribes were there. All right? See, they like to get us, the Jews, the Jews, the Jews. It's not about the Jews. All right? The Lord made a covenant with all the tribes. All right? So Deuteronomy 4 and I'm going to start. 23 says, take heed, this is Moses speaking, take heed unto yourselves, lest ye forget the covenant of the Lord your God, right? Which the northern kingdom did. They fell into the way of idolatry, and so did Judah. Yeah, the scripture tell you about as the cities of Judah, such as their idols, man. So that's why these things happen, the curses. Take heed unto yourselves, lest ye forget the covenant of the Lord your God, which he made with you, and make you a graven image of the likeness of anything which the Lord thy God hath forbidden thee. Now, that doesn't mean you can't have statues and things like that. You can't have carved animals or pictures. It's the making of graven images to worship them, okay? To bow down unto them. So that, because you know, you get people get, but oh, you got a statue. No, having a statue, like if you got a carved lion, you know what I mean, like in your yard or something, that doesn't make you an idol worshiper. It makes you an idol worshiper if you bow down and you worship it. Yeah. For the Lord thy God is a consuming fire, even a jealous God. When thou shalt beget children, and the Lord is only ever jealous for his people. He's not jealous for the other nations. He's always been jealous for his people. When thou shalt beget children and children's children, and ye shall have remained long in the land, and shall corrupt yourselves. Right. So as Moses knew, it was an inevitability. It was prophetic that Israel, the children of Israel would fall. Yeah. And make a graven image or the likeness of anything, and shall do evil in the sight of the Lord thy God, to provoke him to anger. I call heaven and earth witness against you this day, that ye shall soon utterly perish from off the land whereunto ye go over to the Jordan to possess it. Right. And that's why if you look up the borders of Judea, the borders of Judea is not the entirety of the inheritance. It's a reduced inheritance, right? Shall utterly perish from the land whereunto you go over Jordan to possess it. You shall not prolong your days upon it, but shall utterly be destroyed. And the Lord shall scatter you among the nations. You see? Scatter you among the nations, right? The children of God scattered abroad. And ye shall be left few in number among the heathen, whither the Lord shall lead you. And there ye shall serve gods of the work of men's hands, wood and stone, which neither see nor hear, nor eat nor smell. Okay? So that's the condition. You know, Israel will be scattered among the nations, man. But if from thence thou shalt seek the Lord thy God, this gospel, thou shalt find him, if thou seek him with all thy heart and with all thy soul. Right? When thou art in tribulation and all these things are come upon thee, even in the latter days, if thou turn to the Lord thy God and shalt be obedient unto his voice, for the Lord thy God is a merciful God, right? And that mercy is through YAHAWASHI. He will not forsake thee, neither destroy thee, nor forget the covenant of thy fathers, which he sware unto them, right? And that's why when you go into Luke, the 1st chapter, it speaks about that mercy, that covenant that the Lord made with Abraham, right? Because it's through that covenant why this new covenant is being established by YAHAWASHI, all right? Because the Lord is not forsaking that seed. He's not forsaking his people, all right? And there's many more scriptures on our people being scattered. And the next video I'm gonna do, I'm gonna discuss that in Ezekiel 34, because what we're gonna have to move on to is where's John 11. Notice it said the children of God scattered abroad, right? Right. And not for that nation only, but that also you should gather together in one the children of God that are scattered abroad. Now, if we go to the text commentary, right, and we go to David Guzik, and we read what his comments are on that particular passage of scripture. Right, so on that particular place is also that he would gather together in one the children of God who were scattered abroad. John explained that the unconscious prophecy of Caiaphas was greater than he could have ever imagined. The death of YAHAWASHI would gather together in one the sheep of another fold YAHAWASHI had previously spoken of, which is John 10 and 16. All right, so what we're going to do is I'm going to show you in the next lesson how John 10 and 16, when it speaks of the other sheep, is talking about the children of God which are scattered abroad. It's talking about the Israelites which are scattered. All right, it's not talking about actual heathens. There's other sheep I have which are not of this fold. The fold the Lord was speaking of was the southern kingdom, the kingdom of Judah, more specifically Judea. But he had sheep that were not a part of that particular fold, right? The sheep that weren't a part of that fold was all the outcasts of Judea and the other tribes that were scattered abroad. The children of God scattered abroad. So, Lord willing, I'm going to get to that in the next vid. Shalom.